Hello, welcome to this video on lowest common denominator and excluded values of rational equations. The last thing that we need to talk about are this idea about restricted values that cannot be plugged into an equation. So if I was to solve an equation for a variable, say here x, some solutions cannot be included in our set of domain because they produce what's called extraneous solutions. Now, these extraneous solutions are solutions that are excluded values. So I have to talk about this idea of an excluded value. An excluded value is a value that makes a denominator 0. So for instance, if I have this expression, 1 over x, an excluded value would be a value that would make the denominator 0. Okay, so an excluded value, for example, in this situation would be just 0. If I plug in 0 in for my solution here, then I have 0 in my denominator, and I can't have that because we cannot divide by 0. So, for instance, if you look at these examples, 3x over x plus 1 equals 2 over x minus 2 plus x minus 4 over x squared minus x minus 2. If I plug in negative 1 or 2, one of my denominators or multiple would go to 0. And the reason for that is if I plug in here negative 1 into this value, what does this go to? Well, negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Can't have that. If I plug in 2 into this value of x, this goes to 0. Cannot divide by 0, so that goes to 0. And then this trinomial here, we saw this in prior knowledge, x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to x plus 1, x minus 2. So lo and behold, if I plug in negative 1 into x for either of these, or if I plug in 2, then this whole denominator goes to 0. Okay? So that's what an excluded value is. An excluded value is a value that makes the denominator go to 0. Now, if I have solutions that pop up, and we'll talk more about this in the coming days, if I have a solution that is an excluded value, we call that solution extraneous or extra, right? That root part is extra. We just throw it out, okay? And that's what this says here. Extraneous solutions are not included in the final solution set. So let's look at some of these examples. Our objective is to just find the excluded values of the equation, and we'll use more of these coming up. Okay, so how you do this is you set the each factor of the denominator equal to 0. Okay, and I'll type this here. So set each factor in a denominator equal to 0. Okay, so that's what you're going to do first. So let's go ahead and look at that. If I have x minus 2, I set it equal to 0. X plus 4, I set it equal to 0. And then 6, this is kind of a unique case. This one's weird. I set 6 equal to 0. Is 6 ever equal to 0? No, it's not. So I throw that out. We just completely ignore that. Okay, so I have this here. Step 2 is going to be solve for x. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll add 2 to this side, and we get x equals 2. Here, I'll subtract 4 on each side. We get, I want to make sure I write it down here, x equals negative 4. Okay, so what this means is if I plug in 2, this factor will go to 0. So we say, hey, x cannot be 2. If I plug in negative 4, this factor will go to 0, and I throw that out. So we exclude these values. Here are excluded values. Okay, -4 and 2. And if you think about this, these are easily identified as our h values. Isn't our h value here 2? Isn't our h value here -4? Okay, and I want you to remember that x equals h. These are what we call vertical asymptotes when we talk about rational functions. These are vertical asymptotes, right? Now, vertical asymptotes exist for a reason. I cannot have that value included in my domain. So I hope you see the connection between excluded values and vertical asymptotes. Let's look at one more example. Here they want us to find the excluded values of the equation. So again, I'll set each factor in the denominator equal to 0, but notice I have a trinomial. So first, I'll factor. So this is x minus 5 and this thing's glitching. X plus 2. Here I have 2 times x plus 2, and this is 3x. Okay, so I factored my denominators. Now I'm going to set each one equal to 0. So x minus 5 equal to 0 here. X plus 2 equal to 0. Here I can take 2, again I can set 2 equal to 0. We just end up throwing this out, so we ignore this. Notice here how I have x plus 2 repeating. Okay, you only need to write it once. Again, 3, I'll set 3 equal to 0. We just ignore it. We throw it out. And then lastly, I have x equal to 0. Okay, so what are my excluded values? Well, I add 5. And I get 5 as one excluded value. Here I subtract 2. And I get -2 as an excluded value. And then over here, I don't have to do any solving. X is equal to 0. Okay, so what this means is, it means x cannot be -2. X cannot be 0, and x cannot be 5. These are our excluded values. Okay? So, closure for the lesson. What is an excluded value of a rational equation? Please pause the video, write a response in your notes. Hopefully you can state what an excluded value of a rational equation is. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the videos. Have a great day. And there's an excluded value of a rational equation. Okay, it makes one or more of the denominators equal to 0. All right, peace. I'm out.